In late 2025, Sydney became the stage for one of the most shocking crime sagas Australia has ever seen. A world where drug empires, fake terror plots, and deadly arsons all collided. Police seized more than $260 million worth of drugs, stopped a contract killing near a daycare, and uncovered a string of fires targeting schools, synagogues, and historic buildings across New South Wales. But what looked like random chaos turned out to be something far darker, a network of organized criminals using fear, flames, and deception to hide their real business, power, and profit. As detectives connected the dots, one question remained. How deep does this go? And who's really pulling the strings behind Sydney's chaos? The kill team that never killed. This is where things turn truly chilling. Just a week before the drug raids, on October 8, 2025, police received intel that could send a shiver down any parent's spine. Three men, allegedly working for a Southeast Asian organized crime syndicate, were preparing to carry out a contract killing. Their target? A father on his way to pick up his child from daycare in Revesby. During peak hour traffic, tactical officers moved in and intercepted two vehicles. Inside, they found what investigators later called a kill kit: two loaded firearms, balaclavas, body-worn cameras, and containers of fuel. This wasn't some reckless street-level attempt. These were men who operated with cold precision, professionals, or at least trained to act like them. The three suspects, allegedly hired for this single job and not considered high-ranking members of the organization, were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder and for their involvement in a criminal group. But what truly shocked detectives was the sheer audacity. The hit was supposed to happen near a daycare in broad daylight during school pickup hours. The risk of collateral damage was enormous, and yet the syndicate didn't seem to care. According to Assistant Commissioner Scott Cook, the men came pretty close to pulling it off. Police moved in fast because they believed the suspects were just minutes away from a potential massacre. The intended victim, who's now cooperating with investigators, had reportedly fallen out of favor with the syndicate after a personal fallout within the criminal network. In the world of organized crime, such betrayals rarely end peacefully. The Bankstown horror. When organized crime hits home, but these raids and the foiled assassination weren't isolated events. They were part of something much darker, a violent underworld that had stopped following its own rules. Back in April 2025, 5 masked men stormed a home in Bankstown and kidnapped 45-year-old mother Thi Kim Tran. During the attack, her 8-year-old son was struck with a baseball bat so violently that he slipped into a coma. Her 15-year-old son was there too, traumatized but alive. Hours later, police discovered a burnt-out car in Beverly Hills. Inside was Thi Kim Tran's body. She'd been shot and her body set on fire in an attempt to erase any trace of evidence. Investigators later learned that she was never the intended target. The real target was her husband, a man allegedly tied to a Vietnamese-linked organized crime group operating out of Melbourne. In the eyes of those running the syndicate, she wasn't a person anymore. She was leverage, a message, a punishment. Police eventually arrested and charged 29-year-old The An Nguyen with her murder, alleging he helped facilitate the kidnapping. But what horrified detectives wasn't just the brutality, it was the complete disregard for the old rules of organized crime. Innocent families were once considered off-limits. Not anymore. Homicide Squad Commander Joe Dwahey described it as rare and unprecedented to see women and children targeted in this way. The criminal underworld once had a code, but somewhere along the line, that code disappeared. The arson conspiracy, a mystery. Within a mystery, here's where the story takes a strange and unexpected turn. In the middle of all this chaos, drug trafficking, gang violence, and contract killings, another threat started emerging across New South Wales, a string of fires. Some seemed random, others looked targeted, and a few hinted at something much darker beneath the surface. In mid-January 2025, Sydney found itself in panic mode. Within days, several arson attacks hit Jewish institutions, synagogues, schools, and community centers. At first, authorities feared the worst, a coordinated anti-Semitic terror campaign. The attacks were organized, precise, and frighteningly professional. In response, police launched Strike Force Pearl, an operation dedicated to finding who was behind it. Before long, 14 people were in custody, but what detectives uncovered next turned the entire case upside down. This wasn't terrorism at all. It was organized crime. Police alleged that a criminal syndicate had planned the arsons not out of hate, but for money and manipulation. The goal wasn't ideology. It was profit and power. One of the main suspects was 31-year-old Nicholas Alexander, who police believe helped coordinate 5 of the January attacks, including the catastrophic blaze at the Only About Children child care center in Maroubra. That single fire caused more than $3.4 million in damage. According to investigators, Alexander wasn't acting on his own. He was following orders, working on behalf of someone else, someone higher up the chain. And that revelation changed everything. These weren't hate-fueled extremists. They were criminals using fake, ideological motives as a smokescreen to distract police and the public while pushing their own underground agenda, the explosive that wasn't just when it seemed the situation couldn't get worse. It did. On January 19, 2025, police discovered a caravan on the outskirts of Sydney, and what they found inside sent shockwaves through the entire country. Packed inside were explosives, power gel, an industrial compound powerful enough to create a blast radius of 40 meters. Alongside it, officers found a handwritten note filled with anti-Semitic statements and a list of Jewish places of worship. To investigators, this looked like the ultimate escalation, a bomb plot inspired by hate ready to kill innocent people. For weeks, authorities treated it as the smoking gun in what they believed was a full-blown terrorism campaign. The country held its breath. But 2 months later, in March 2025, the truth emerged, and it was even more disturbing. According to the Australian Federal Police, the entire thing was a hoax. The explosives, the note, the setup, all of it had been staged. Police now allege that organized criminals had faked the entire terrorism plot. The idea was to stir fear, create chaos, and potentially manipulate ongoing investigations. AFP Deputy Commissioner Chrissy Barrett called it an intricate plot devised by organized criminals, both locally and abroad. The mastermind behind it, still out there. Here's how investigators believe it worked. The criminals got hold of real explosive materials, planted the caravan, and then tipped off the police themselves. The resulting panic was deliberate, a controlled storm designed to divert attention, disrupt operations, and buy time for whatever they were really planning behind the scenes. The Lismore Masonic Lodge attack fast. Forward to October 14, 2025. It's just before dawn in Lismore, a quiet town still rebuilding after years of hardship. At around 4 a.m., flames tear through one of its most historic landmarks, the Masonic Lodge on Magellan Street, right across from the town library. Within minutes, the century-old building is engulfed. By the time the firefighters gain control, the roof has collapsed, the interior is completely gutted, and only the ornate front facade remains standing, a haunting shell of what once was. The damage was described as catastrophic. Before the sun had even risen, police moved in. 2 men, Christopher Andrew Main, 32, and Cameron Robert Surtees, 36, both from Nimbin, were arrested at a nearby shopping center. They were charged soon after. Detective Inspector Grant Erickson confirmed what locals already suspected. This was no accident. The fire was being treated as arson. Although investigators were still determining the exact cause and origin, one thing was certain: the circumstances were deeply suspicious. What made this case so strange was how it differed from the earlier anti-Semitic arson attacks. This one didn't fit the pattern. It wasn't political. It wasn't connected to religion. It just seemed random. Why target a Freemasons lodge? Why these 2 men? And why now? That's where the puzzle deepens. When you line up the events, organized crime, strange fires, unexplained motives, it starts to look like part of a much bigger, more chaotic pattern. Other suspicious fires. A pattern emerges. Lismore wasn't the only place hit by mysterious fires that year. On August 24, 2025, a blaze ripped through a unit in Bateau Bay on the Nessidadoler's central coast. A 77-year-old woman was killed inside. Police arrested a 26-year-old man, charging him with arson. At first, investigators thought it was a domestic dispute gone wrong, but soon realized there was more to it. The case revealed how arson was being used as a weapon, a tool for control, intimidation, and sometimes distraction. Then came Bega in October 2025, another suspicious house fire just meters from the spot where a man had been fatally stabbed 2 weeks earlier. Whether it was revenge, retaliation, or something else entirely, investigators couldn't yet say, but the pattern was undeniable. Fires following violence, crime scenes going up in flames, evidence erased in smoke. And perhaps the most disturbing revelation came from Sydney's west. Authorities discovered that a volunteer firefighter, someone trusted to protect lives, had been deliberately lighting bushfires between June and September 2025. According to Strikeforce Toronto, the teenager would set fires, then respond to them in his role as a firefighter. Police called it the ultimate betrayal. It exposed something truly unsettling, that even within systems built on trust and service, corruption and thrill-seeking could creep in. The volunteer firefighter betrayal. The idea that someone sworn to protect could instead create chaos hit the public hard. This wasn't just another case of arson. It was a betrayal that shook confidence in one of the country's most respected institutions. When the very people meant to save lives are the ones starting the fires, it changes everything. It's not just about crime anymore. It's about the collapse of trust, about how deep this problem runs through society. This wasn't a single incident. It symbolized a bigger issue, the erosion of integrity in places that once represented safety and reliability. Connecting the dots. What does it all mean? So, what connects all of this? The Sydney raids, the drug syndicates, the arson attacks, the hoaxes, and the betrayals. On the surface, it looks like a series of unrelated crimes. But dig deeper, and a pattern starts to emerge. Organized crime syndicates aren't just trafficking drugs. They're using chaos as camouflage. Fires, explosions, fake terror plots, all designed to spread fear, confuse investigators, and pull resources away from what truly matters: their drug empire. By creating panic and distraction, these groups buy time, allowing them to move shipments, launder money, and strengthen their networks under the radar. And these aren't small-time operators. Police say these are transnational syndicates with ties to Southeast Asia, working through networks that stretch across Melbourne, Sydney, and beyond. They use frontmen, money mules, and fake ideological narratives to keep authorities guessing. Everything they do, from arson to extortion, is part of a bigger strategy: protect the flow of drugs and maintain control through fear. In the end, what's happening in Sydney and across New South Wales isn't just about crime. It's about power, deception, and the frightening ease with which chaos can be turned into a business model. The pattern of escalation. What's truly disturbing about this entire story is how quickly it's escalating. For decades, Australia's organized crime world had its own twisted code, certain lines you just didn't cross. Then came the arson attacks, the fake terror plots, and the mysterious fires tearing through random buildings across New South Wales. These weren't just acts of violence, they were tactics. Tools designed to control public fear, to create chaos, and to keep police distracted. Instead of hiding from the spotlight, these syndicates are now using fear itself as a weapon. They're setting fires not only to destroy evidence or property, but to manipulate attention, to shift focus away from what's really happening. Their drug networks and financial operations expanding quietly in the background. The human cost, but behind all the numbers, all the arrests, all the headlines, there's a human cost. Children growing up traumatized after seeing violence inside their own homes. Entire communities living in fear as arson attacks hit places of worship and community centers. Firefighters realizing one of their own had been setting fires on purpose. The ultimate betrayal. And a 77-year-old woman who died. Alone in a blaze, her death treated as potential arson in a suspected domestic violence case. Every one of these tragedies connects back to the same system, a web of organized crime that reaches across borders and uses people like pawns. The men charged, the 3 from the drug raids, the alleged hitmen, the 2 arrested over the Lismore Lodge fire, they're not masterminds. They're just parts of a much larger machine, a machine that's growing smarter, more ruthless, and far less predictable. The investigation continues. Of November 2025, police investigations are still unfolding. NSW authorities have multiple strike forces running at once, tackling everything from organized crime and drug trafficking to arson and financial crime. Detective Inspector Grant Erickson, who's leading the investigation into the Lismore Lodge fire, called the damage catastrophic, and made it clear that incidents like this are treated as active crime scenes until proven otherwise. Police are now connecting the dots, methodically piecing together how all of these seemingly isolated crimes fit into a much larger picture. Looking ahead, what's becoming clear is that organized crime in Australia is changing. The old rules are gone. The line between a criminal operation and a terror plot is blurring, and in some cases, deliberately blurred by criminals who know how to use ideology as a disguise. Arson isn't just about revenge anymore. It's strategic, it's coordinated, it's being used as a tactical tool, and the violence that once stayed hidden in the shadows of the underworld is now spilling into ordinary life, into daycares, family homes, and even historic community landmarks. The Sydney raids and the arrests that followed are major victories for law enforcement. The $260 million drug bust hit the syndicates where it hurts most. The foiled assassination attempt near a daycare almost certainly saved lives, and the exposure of the fake terrorism plot revealed how far these criminals will go to manipulate fear. But beneath those wins lies a deeper problem, a system under immense strain. New South Wales now faces an underworld that's more brazen, more organized, and less bound by the codes that once defined it. The truth behind the arson plots, their motives, their patterns, and their full connection to organized crime remains only partially understood. And until that mystery is solved, people across the state are left to wonder what's really happening out there in the dark hours before dawn, when the first flames appear in an old building, or in broad daylight, when tactical officers move in to stop another hit team before it's too late, because the story of the Sydney raids and the arson plots that followed isn't over. It's still being written, case by case, fire by fire, and arrest by arrest.